What if I told you that the fat you can't see is far more dangerous than anything you can pinch with your fingers? You've probably stood in front of the mirror. Maybe you've lost a few pounds. Maybe your jeans fit a little better, and you thought you were making progress. But deep inside your body, wrapped around your liver, your heart, your pancreas, and your intestines, there's a layer of fat that no mirror can reveal and no tape measure can reach. It's called visceral fat. And right now, millions of people are walking around completely unaware that this hidden layer is slowly dismantling their health from the inside out. This isn't about vanity. This isn't about fitting into a smaller size. This is about the silent biological war happening inside you every single day, and why understanding it could genuinely change the course of your life. Most people think fat is just fat. You eat too much, you gain weight, you diet, you lose it. Simple equation, right? But visceral fat doesn't follow those rules. It's not just stored energy sitting quietly in your belly waiting to be burned off on a treadmill. Visceral fat is metabolically active, meaning it's constantly doing things, releasing things, and disrupting things inside your body. Think of it as a rogue organ that's taken up residence in your abdomen and decided to start issuing its own commands. It pumps out inflammatory chemicals, interferes with your hormones, confuses your hunger signals, and drains your energy so completely that some days you wake up already exhausted before the day has even started. The scariest part is that you can be a completely normal weight and still have dangerous levels of visceral fat hiding deep inside you. So what actually happens when your body finally starts breaking this fat down? This is where things get genuinely fascinating, because visceral fat loss isn't just about getting lighter on a scale. When your body begins to dissolve this deep, hidden layer, it triggers a cascade of biological events so profound and so far-reaching that essentially every major organ in your body is affected. It starts when your body senses an energy shortage, maybe from fasting, maybe from cutting back on carbohydrates, maybe from finally sleeping enough and reducing stress hormones. A quiet signal is sent at the cellular level, almost like a private message passed through the system. The message is clear and urgent. It's time to tap into the deep reserves. Visceral fat, you're up. And what happens next reshapes everything. Here's why the body targets visceral fat first, and this part is important. Visceral fat is nestled right next to your major blood vessels and organs. It's also highly sensitive to the metabolic hormones that govern your entire energy system, things like insulin, cortisol, and catecholamines. If your body were a city, visceral fat would be located right in the capital, just minutes away from every decision-making hub. Your regular belly fat, the stuff under the skin, lives out in the suburbs. So when the emergency signal fires, visceral fat responds first and fast. It begins releasing free fatty acids directly into the bloodstream, sending urgent chemical messages to your liver, your muscles, your heart, and your pancreas. The message essentially says, new fuel incoming. Stop relying on sugar. We're running on fat now. And with that single shift, your entire metabolic government calls an emergency meeting. The liver is the first organ to feel the full impact of this change, and what it does next is nothing short of extraordinary. As fatty acids flood in from dissolving visceral fat, the liver doesn't collapse under the pressure. It adapts. It upgrades itself almost in real time. Enzymes that specialize in burning fat are rapidly increased. The liver switches its primary fuel source from glucose to fatty acids, and in doing so, it begins producing ketones, which are a cleaner, more efficient form of energy that your brain and muscles absolutely love. But it doesn't stop there. The liver also starts performing its other jobs with renewed power, things like detoxifying your blood, regulating your blood sugar, and processing hormones like estrogen, cortisol, and testosterone. A 2023 study from Washington University found that people who practiced intermittent fasting for just 8 weeks saw their liver enzyme levels drop by an average of 25%, with MRI scans confirming real improvements in fatty liver conditions. Your liver wasn't broken, it was just buried under metabolic overload. Now let's talk about inflammation, because this is the piece most people completely miss when they think about fat loss. Visceral fat is one of the most powerful drivers of chronic inflammation in the human body. It constantly releases inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, including TNF-alpha and IL-6, which push your immune system into a prolonged state of high alert. Imagine a smoke alarm that never turns off. Your immune system is constantly responding to a fire that never quite goes out. Over time, this chronic low-grade inflammation damages your blood vessels, disrupts your brain chemistry, weakens your gut lining, and accelerates aging at a cellular level. Every system in your body takes a hit. But here's the beautiful twist that makes this story worth telling. When visceral fat starts to dissolve, those inflammatory signals begin to fade. Immune cells that were locked in attack mode actually switch roles, moving from fighters to repair crews, and your body enters a healing state it may not have experienced in years. The hormonal transformation that follows visceral fat loss is something that has to be understood to truly appreciate what your body is capable of. Cortisol, the stress hormone, had been running at chronically elevated levels for as long as that visceral fat was present. But as inflammation cools and the fat recedes, cortisol begins to normalize. You start sleeping better. You feel less emotionally reactive. Your nervous system, which had been stuck in a constant low-level fight or flight state, finally begins to settle. Then there's insulin. As visceral fat shrinks, your cells become more sensitive to insulin, meaning your body no longer needs to flood your bloodstream with it just to manage your blood sugar. Cravings for sugar start to drop naturally. Your energy stabilizes across the day, and your risk of developing type 2 diabetes falls significantly, not because of a medication, but because your biology has been corrected at the source. Leptin and a hormone called adiponectin also make dramatic comebacks during this process, and their return changes your entire relationship with food. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain you've had enough to eat. When you carry excess visceral fat, your brain actually becomes resistant to leptin's signal, meaning it never quite receives the message that you're full. That's why overeating can feel so effortless and so relentless. But as visceral fat decreases, leptin resistance begins to reverse. The signal gets through again. You feel genuinely satisfied after meals. Hunger becomes predictable and manageable instead of wild and overwhelming. Adiponectin, meanwhile, is a hormone that promotes fat burning and stabilizes blood sugar, but it gets suppressed by visceral fat. When it returns, your metabolism becomes more efficient almost automatically. You're not forcing your body to change anymore. Your body is changing itself. Now here's something that most fat loss conversations completely ignore, and that's the relationship between visceral fat and your gut microbiome. Think of your gut as a living ecosystem, a garden filled with trillions of bacteria that influence your mood, your immunity, your digestion, and even your ability to think clearly. Chronic inflammation from visceral fat creates a toxic environment in that garden, essentially a scorching drought that kills off beneficial bacteria and lets harmful ones take over. But when visceral fat dissolves and inflammation subsides, the environment in your gut shifts. Beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium begin to thrive again. These microbes don't just help you digest food, they produce serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with happiness, calm, and restful sleep.
I am so glad we decided to come
Research
here
from the
tonight.
University of California confirms that up to 90% of your body's serotonin is actually made in the gut. And chronic inflammation from visceral fat directly suppresses that production. This is why so many people who lose significant visceral fat report feeling emotionally lighter, sleeping more deeply, and experiencing a kind of mental clarity they hadn't felt in years. It's not a coincidence. It's the gut-brain axis doing exactly what it was designed to do once the interference is removed. Your gut sends quieter, calmer signals to your brain. Your brain responds by dialing down stress and allowing deeper repair cycles to begin. Bloating often improves, irritability fades, sleep becomes more restorative, digestion feels smoother and less complicated. These aren't small quality-of-life upgrades. These are signs that something profound is happening at the biological level, a restoration of balance that affects how you think, how you feel, and how you move through your days. Your heart and cardiovascular system also experience a remarkable transformation during this process, and the numbers behind it are genuinely striking. Visceral fat distorts your cholesterol balance, elevating the harmful LDL particles and suppressing the protective HDL particles, while simultaneously driving up inflammation in your blood vessels. This combination is one of the most direct routes to heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. According to research from the American Heart Association, just a 10% reduction in visceral fat can lower your risk of heart disease and stroke by up to 30%. Think about that for a moment. Not 30% after years of medication, not 30% after an extreme intervention, just 10% less visceral fat achieved through lifestyle changes alone. As the fat recedes, blood vessels relax, blood pressure stabilizes, and your heart, which had been working harder than it needed to for years, finally gets to beat with ease. Once your body has worked through the initial phase of visceral fat breakdown and the detox and repair processes are underway, something remarkable emerges that scientists call metabolic flexibility. This is the ability to effortlessly switch between burning glucose and burning fat, depending on what's available, and it's one of the most reliable markers of genuine long-term health. Most people who carry excess visceral fat are stuck burning only sugar. The moment their blood sugar dips, they feel shaky, irritable, foggy, and desperate for food. But as visceral fat dissolves and the hormonal system recalibrates, the mitochondria inside your cells, your cellular power plants, begin firing more cleanly and more efficiently. They produce more ATP, which is your body's actual energy currency, with less oxidative stress and cellular waste. The result is energy that lasts, real, sustained, clean-burning energy that doesn't crash at 3 p.m. and doesn't require another coffee to survive the afternoon. It's worth pausing here to talk about what happens at the cellular level during this entire transformation, because it goes even deeper than organs and hormones. When visceral fat dissolves and inflammation quiets, your body activates a process called autophagy, which is essentially your cell's internal cleaning system. Damaged proteins, misfolded structures, and cellular debris that have been accumulating for years get swept out and recycled. Your cells quite literally rebuild themselves. Damaged tissues get repaired. The immune system becomes more precise and effective. Your skin, which reflects what's happening internally more than most people realize, often begins to look clearer and more vibrant. Muscles become more responsive. Your body stops operating in survival mode and starts investing in long-term maintenance and resilience. This is biological renewal happening in real time, not from a supplement or a procedure, but from your own body doing what it was always designed to do. Perhaps the most empowering part of this entire story is what happens once the transformation stabilizes. Your body doesn't just burn visceral fat and then go back to its old patterns. Your biological set point actually shifts. The autonomic nervous system, that delicate balance between stress response and rest response, finds a new equilibrium. Your body stops treating deep belly fat storage as a necessary survival strategy. Because when you reduce chronic stress, stabilize blood sugar, improve sleep, and eat in a way that supports your biology rather than fighting it, your body receives a clear message that it is safe. It no longer needs to hoard emergency fat reserves in your abdomen. It no longer needs to keep your hormones in a state of chaos. Instead, it locks in the new state, protecting it, building on it, and making it your default way of functioning.